Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. On this episode of the show, Dr. Emily Koochel, Manager of Financial Wellness at eMoney Advisor, is with me for a much-needed exploration of the importance of the human element in an increasingly AI-powered world of financial advice. We all know that AI is going to be leaned on heavily by financial advisory and wealth management firms in the future. And we also know that clients and prospects aren't all that far behind in their adoption of AI tools for their lives. So where does that leave you, the financial advisor? How will your role evolve? Well, lucky for you, Dr. Emily Koochel and her team have been working very hard on this topic, and she's going to share some fantastic insights on today's show. Now, before we get to that conversation with Emily, please do make sure you take a moment to subscribe to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or a suggestion for a topic or a guest, hit me up. I'm basically at Mike Langford everywhere on the internet, or you can shoot me an email, podcast@finsermarketing.com. Okay, let's get to the conversation with Dr. Emily Koochel. Well, Dr. Emily Koochel, welcome to the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's so wonderful to see you.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. Thank you for the invite. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. This will be fantastic. We had an amazing prep call, and it's Friday. Both of us are looking forward to
Yes.
awesome weekends. So I think you said you're going to hang out with your nieces. I've got a little bit of an empty nester thing happening this weekend with my wife. We're starting. This is weird. So our youngest is in high school, and she's doing all the activities, and so we're starting to have that feeling of like, oh man, this is what it's going to be like when the kids aren't here. So fun stuff.
Enjoy it though. Sometimes it's kind of nice to have a little bit of quiet, and you just get to decide what you want to do.
That's exactly right. A little date night, movies, something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of fun. All right. So, I'm thrilled to have you here because we're going to be diving into something that I think is on the top of many financial advisors' minds, positively, negatively, and just maybe it's general anxiety wise, which is, we're going to be talking about AI and how it is going to change our businesses, right? Change the business in the industry. So one of the things I want to do, and I don't usually do this to start off the show, but I want to shine a light on you and what makes you uniquely qualified to talk about this as a person who can help guide this conversation. So the doctor's in. Tell us a little bit about you. What makes you uniquely qualified to talk about AI for financial advisors and how the industry might change and so forth?
Yeah. So I'll bring it from a little bit of a different lens. So I work for eMoney, which is a financial planning technology company. We're certainly talking about it just as much as everybody else is. My personal background is actually in financial psychology. This is where I do a lot of my research. It's the research that I do alongside eMoney. I have some designations that also kind of continue in that same line. So certified financial therapist, behavioral financial advisor, those types of things. And so this is kind of a unique area as we look at AI from a bit of a psychology lens and a financial counseling lens, really emphasizing the human side of it, but also, of course, acknowledging the fact that it's still technology and I come from a technology company. And so we also have to find that balance, but a little bit of maybe a different side of an AI conversation than perhaps folks have heard before.
That's right. I like it. Yeah, this is definitely a different angle, right? Because we've had people on the show and they talk about AI and what AI can do. And to your point, more from a technology perspective and less from the, the perspective of it being like an advisor, the human element. I mean, we talk about it all the time. This is a relationship-based business. Like, I've talked about ad nauseum. I've used this term, but like your clients chose you because they like you as an advisor. They didn't choose you because of your offerings. They didn't choose you because of your pricing. Because guess what? Every other advisor out there has the same access to stocks, bonds, and mutual funds as you do. They probably have access to a very similar financial planning tool. They probably charge about the same price. To some extent, the industry is commoditized from a product perspective, right? but it's not from a human perspective, right? Like they are choosing you because something about you when they sat across the table from you said, Emily, I think you're the one for me. I think we're gonna be working together, and you have the temperament, the whatever. So I think this is super important. One thing before we get into like the meat of this, certified financial therapist. I have to admit, been in this industry for a long time. First time I've ever heard about that designation. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I'm actually curious. Like this, that exists.
Yeah. So the CFT, relatively new in terms of how long some of the other designations have existed, but the body of work, the field of research has been around for a little bit now. We've seen it tucked under maybe behavioral finance, or we've seen it tucked under financial wellness, or some of these larger kind of umbrella terms.
Mm-hmm.
But financial therapy, more specifically in that designation, is really bringing together the financial planning skill set, of course, but it is certainly also focused on more therapeutic approaches, as well as being informed by therapeutic framework. So when we think about some of the designations that are out there, financial therapy is often going to be focused on the history, right? Somebody's financial history, maybe some of their socialization, what are the lessons they've learned that are showing up today as adults, right? There's a lot of what we've learned previously that continues to inform our behaviors today, our values, our associations to money, and some of which are really good and some that are not so helpful to us any longer. They don't serve us so much. So financial therapy allows us to really dive into maybe something that's a little bit more under the surface. If we think about financial counseling, which is another designation, they're often focused on today. So debt management and cash flow, those types of things that I need today. And then if we think about financial planning or CFP and some of those designations, at the heart of it, they're really future oriented. So we're looking at estate planning, retirement planning, all of which is in the future. So if we see sometimes in financial planning, folks are meeting with an advisor and maybe they're really resistant to implementation or to change, and we're just finding that resistance, sometimes we chalk it up to they're just a non-compliant client. They don't want the help. But financial therapy and some of these other designations and fields of research actually inform us that there may be something under the surface that's going on. And so it may be more of that they're not in the best financial fit for that professional. So also just to raise awareness, to expand your network, similar to what you do with CPAs and estate attorneys, to certainly check out financial therapists and financial counselors in your area for those folks that could really benefit from that type of help. And oftentimes they come back to that financial planner now. They're better suited to be a financial planning client.
Yeah, I like to say, like I said, this is the first time I've heard of this, and it makes sense that it exists. But I think you're spot on. We were joking about, or I was joking around about how like I grew up in a suburb of Boston, which earlier in my life I had the classic Boston accent, but it was a very blue collar neighborhood, right? And it makes sense to me that people who grow up in a lower income, blue collar type situation will carry some of the financial realities, the financial viewpoints or whatever. And sometimes it could be traumatic, right? The things that happen to them in their life that would influence how they behave today, or how they think about money, or the things that they would wrestle with in terms of today, but also charting their future, right? It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so we essentially know that we start learning about money well before we understand what money actually is. So early on in our childhood, we start to observe, how people are interacting with money, maybe how they're talking about money. And although it's still a bit abstract for some time, we recognize that there is a feeling that happens. So maybe I'm observing somebody speaking about money, and I start to feel chest tightening, or I get really anxious hearing them, because that's associated with maybe there's conflict, or, there's division when that happens. Or maybe it's good when they start talking about money, it means we're going shopping, we're going on a trip, I'm getting an allowance, and maybe there's some really positive associations there. But all of that to be said is that we actually start to try to understand the world around us much earlier than we probably give ourselves credit for. And some of those associations continue to show up throughout our life, just throughout our lifespan. But some continue to show up in adulthood where, again, they kind of no longer serve us. So it's really interesting to look at essentially your socialization journey as you gain more exposure, more education, career paths, all of those continue to inform our relationship with money.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? I'm glad we started there because that really did lay an incredible foundation for what we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talking about AI, but more from a human element, right? What can it do and help? How do we make sure we maintain the human element, or how can it help also foster a better relationship with your clients and help them maybe get through some of the things that have affected them or the baggage that they carry? Good or bad baggage, I guess. If you can, baggage is not necessarily a negative thing, by the way. Especially if you have really nice travel bags like I do, it's a good bag. Thank you. I've been complimented.
Positive reframe.
It's hilarious. I know, exactly. I've actually been complimented. I've literally had people go, those are really nice suitcases. Like, I know, right?
I know.
Thank you for noticing.
To those who are traveling, invest in some good luggage. It is so worth it, and it lasts
100%. I actually do tell people that, like, listen, some of the best money you will spend if you are a traveler is on high quality luggage. They put the pockets the right places they're supposed to be. They have places for, like, your passport is right here. All the type of stuff that you'd think, and also they last and more rugged and all that type of stuff. So 100% agree. Invest in your luggage.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to the big picture question to now that we're getting to the kind of more the meat of the conversation. How do you see AI changing the way that the financial advisory business operates without replacing the human connection that advisors provide?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, for, not going back that far, AI was something that was a bit more theoretical. We would talk about it. We would anticipate that there could be a place for it in our industry amongst other industries. But really, in 2022, when ChatGPT hits the scene and everybody gets access to it at their fingertips, it is, amongst all fields, but financial planning being a field that says, oh my gosh, what is this going to do for us? What is it going to do for the services that we provide? And, what could it do to future kind of career of financial planning? And so this is really interesting because what we ended up doing, even just at eMoney, we acknowledge that this is a curiosity. So we went out and we surveyed about 400 advisors, and we wanted to just do a little bit of sentiment around what do you think and feel or anticipate around AI. So interestingly enough, what we found was about 72% of advisors see AI as both an opportunity, but they're also a little cautious about it, as they should be. We're still in the early days of really understanding what AI can do for us. About 27% actually said that this is a great opportunity. We should actually be acting really quickly on it. And almost nobody said that we should be avoiding AI. So just from kind of a sense of advisors, they are cautiously optimistic about it. And they really see it as an opportunity to build in greater efficiency, productivity. They also are anticipating to have, better data-driven insights, which can help with that efficiency, enhancing decision-making, the planning process, also the reporting process. But the other thing they noted was having a client-centric focus. And so that not only comes through in being able to proactively maybe communicate with somebody or meeting scheduling or note-taking, those types of things, but they also mention this balance of the human relationship there. So if we think about it as we continue to build in these efficiencies, we also have to continue to differentiate us, kind of previous to your point, that we have to use our differentiated value. And a lot of that is going to come in the human touch and in the human relationship that we have with our clients. So as we build those efficiencies, we certainly should see that we also have the opportunity to dive deeper and to create more personalized experiences. So that's kind of a general sense of where we found advisors are within the last few months here.
I love that you shared some actual data from talking to advisors, because we've kind of been through this once before, I think, right? When robo advisors came on, there was a lot of anxiety in the industry, right? What is going on? And a lot of people, there was a lot of false promise in those, because they they did, many of the firms that were pushing robo-advisory offerings did talk about them as with AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, a lot of that
Okay.
type of stuff. And frankly, it wasn't. It was just basic algorithmic stuff. You put some information in and it spit out.
Yeah, some rules, kind of rules grids, those types of
That's right.
things. Yeah.
Here's the model portfolio you should be in out of the 6 that we offer based on all the information you gave us. Here's your flavor that you get. But now we're starting to get into some real stuff, and advisors, unless they're really resistant to technology, they've likely tinkered with it, right? They have likely gone on and messed around with ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, or heck, this is a fun one. This actually happens. I laugh every time. My wife texted me a photo today, and I had my AirPods in. It was on my iPhone, and it said, "Amy sent you a text, a picture of a cat sleeping in a bed in a room." And sure enough, it was a picture of our cat sitting in like a little cat bed, and she hadn't used this bed in a while. So it was kind of this is the reason why Amy sent it to me. She's like, for some reason, the cat's decided today's the day I use the bed I haven't used in months. So it was just one of those funny things. But the fact that AI can recognize it's a picture of a cat in a cat bed, which was one of those like, wow, this is really cool. So if you're an advisor, you're not immune to going, wow, that was awesome. Right. But you're also not immune to going, all right, I think I need to sit down for a minute. What does this mean for me? And I'll tell you why. Financial advisors, insurance agents, mortgage brokers, yada, yada, yada. When you look at, and this is going back like 15 years, jobs that are likely to be replaced by a computer, always top of the list. Anything numbers oriented. And as we said, and you just articulated pretty well as well, is that you're never going to replace the human element, right? Like, so as much as you can, the numbers element's easy to replace. I can upload all my stuff and you can come out with it. That's easy. But being able to have that good bedside manner, or that help somebody through their trauma, whatever, that's hard. So how do you, when you talk to advisors, and you do a lot of speaking and you're on a lot of these shows and so forth, how do you go about comforting, if you will, that this is it's a tool rather than a threat? What are some of your key talking points?
Yeah, I really like the kind of some of the points that you were just bringing up. There is this idea of we've actually been here before, right? The human has been a little threatened by technology before. And in fact, one of my first financial planning positions, we were using Excel, we were using Microsoft Word, and now I work for a company where, of course, we specialize in creating financial plans. And early on, even as those technologies were emerging, there's this idea of, well, are the future financial planners really going to understand, what operates under the hood, right? Are they really going to understand, and can they fact check it? Can they use it appropriately?
Yeah.
So we've certainly experienced some of this hesitation, maybe even some of this fear previously, and to a more recent point, the robo-advisors coming through and people saying, oh my gosh, is this going to replace everything that we know about it? But actually, if we turn even to the education system in financial planning, a lot of those degrees are called personal financial planning. And it's done on purpose because the person is at the center of a lot of what we do. And in fact, more research. I am a PhD. This is where I draw.
Bring the thunder. Let's go.
Knowledge from is that when we ask advisors, just generally, why did you get into this? It's really through and through, I wanted to help people. And so we often may not think about financial planning as a helping profession, but it certainly is. And it's incredibly impactful when done correctly. So it is one of our biggest differentiated values is the fact that we have the human skill set to it. So while, again, we can use technology to certainly help us and facilitate all of this, we continue to see that people want really personalized guidance, and they have the opportunity to have access to all of the information at their fingertips. But as you and I know, as you start to Google search something that you're experiencing or a symptom, you still have this question of, but that's not quite uniquely Emily. right? Like it's
Uh,
still not showing up as my personalized, unique experience. And
yeah.
this is where advisors come in. We can bring somebody's life to, we can bring the financial lives of people alive inside of the financial planning process in the financial plan if done well. And
Yeah.
even as we look at some of the younger generations, which I know people often say, the younger generations are showing up or growing up in just a highly digital generation, right? That's what they know. We still see that those younger generations are seeking those unique experiences with a financial advisor. They're still looking for somebody who understands them and their financial
Yeah.
journeys. And we're always seeking this trusted relationship. I want somebody who's involved. I want somebody who has a little skin in the game that I can call up. And that's kind of the balance too. While we see these advances, we still see the human centric pieces being incredibly important. And that spans even to our younger generations that we
Yeah.
often say, they're connected to everything. They don't value the human relationship. And we actually don't necessarily see that supported.
Yeah. I like that you brought that up, the demographic component of it, because I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to think, well, these young Gen Z, millennial types, I know millennials are now getting to 40 and so forth. So like it's no, but these younger folks younger than me, all they want to do is be on their phones and use technology and so forth. But I'll tell you what, I've got a son who's a college student. Dude is hardcore to vinyl records. He likes tactile stuff. And I think that's in part because he grew up with so much digital. There's a novelty element to it. But when you spend a lot of, you start to realize this isn't real, right? This is real. And I think there's a way to really wow that younger client, if you will, because when they come in the door and they're like, oh my God, this is like legitimate, like white glove service this person really cares about. They're looking me in the eye. My computer doesn't look me in the eye, right? ChatGPT doesn't look you in the eye. They shake your hand. They offer you a cup of coffee or water or whatever. That's like real human stuff. They're asking you like questions and guiding the way in a way that, an online tool isn't going to. It might ask similar questions. And then on the other end of the spectrum, let's call it your more mature, like whether it's Gen X or Boomer age, we're constantly shaking our fists at the wind. I'm Gen X, so we're constantly shaking our fists at the wind. Like, can I talk to a human? I'd like to somebody to answer the phone, right. and so I can legitimately, the AI bot or whatever is not answering all my questions. So can I just talk to a person who can walk me through this? Probably be faster. So I think you're right. I think there is actually a demand and a desire for a real human element here.
Yeah. And not to mention, if we think about what some of those conversations financial planners are having, they are incredibly emotive. They are personal. So if we think about the conversations around, what does retirement look like for you? What do you want to do during retirement? Those types of things. Certainly we can put some goals in place, but it is quite emotional for people. It's a big identity shift. We often see people, trying to connect to this version of their future selves, which can be really difficult when we've spent years and years of defining ourselves through our job and our work and the things that we're doing today. We're thinking about the conversations around estate planning, again, a really emotional topic. We're thinking about what happens, in the future, or, generational wealth transfer. All of these conversations, while yes, we can put that into, a ChatGPT or just technology in general, it certainly does not necessarily carry that same level of, comfort that we get when speaking to an advisor and what they can offer, not only in their experience, but also saying, I've had others who have experienced something similar to this. You can help normalize it. You can help address some of those more emotional topics. And so what we're doing is impactful, certainly by the numbers, but it is impactful to the individuals and the families that we serve that have nothing to do with the numbers.
Yeah. It's funny. You've heard people joke, like, your computer can't give you a hug, right? Like the AI can't give you a hug if you're upset. Can't hand you a tissue. but also just can't relate, right? Look, technically AI will get to the point, right, where it's smart enough to go, oh, other clients have had this and this is how they've solved that problem. For sure, that's absolutely coming, right? But they can't go like, oh yeah, my son's in college too, and you know what? Similar thing happened to me. The old feel, felt, found technique. You've probably learned that. You're like, I know how you feel. I felt the same way, but here's what I found. Right? That it's a great sales / whatever relationship technique. Feel, felt, found. Right? And I'm sure most advisors have used that at some point in time. Or hey, I've had other clients who've had the exact same experience. You should talk to Joe. Like that's another component, right? Relationships, referrals, and so forth. So there's a lot of human element that's just never going to go away and never be replaced. And people will always value that. So let's switch. So I think we've got a bedrock there where I think we've made people feel a little better that their world's not ending.
Agreed. I don't think it is.
No, I don't think so either. And I don't think anybody genuinely believes it is.
Right.
There will be for sure 100% fully AI tools or AI powered tools for financial planning that some clients will choose to go to and have a relationship with their computer versus ever leaving their house and talking to a real human being. That will actually happen. Right. But by the way, something ridiculous like 78% of Americans do not have a financial advisor. So there's plenty of opportunity for you to like have you don't need 1 million clients. You only need your 100 or 150, depending upon your model. So let's dive into like what the good stuff, what AI can do for advisors and help them enhance their business. So what are some practical ways that you're seeing now? I mean, obviously everything's moving quickly and we're recording this in early 2025. If somebody happens to be seeing this in the future, what are some practical ways that advisors can start integrating AI into their practice without really disrupting client relationships too much at the moment? Like, so what are the ways you're seeing?
Yeah. So, it doesn't have to be something that is just, kind of wide sweeping changes, especially if you're somebody who's still a little on the fence or a little hesitant about what all of this actually means. And it's going to be important that like any other tech decision or any, services decision that you make, that you ensure that it's a fit. It's a fit for you. Yeah. It's a fit for your firm. It's a fit for your team. And that'll look different for some because they may be a part of a larger firm who's making some of those decisions. And so you may have resources or access to things, technology, because that firm has already taken it on and you'll get that experience that way. And you'll have others that are really having to explore it themselves. So let's just kind of talk generally about what that can look like. First and foremost, we're talking a lot about what AI can do, which is building that efficiency, some automation in there. So identify the manual processes that you still see in place in the services that you provide. So look at the workflows, look at the things that are consuming a lot of your valuable time, and look for opportunities where you are hopeful that could be streamlined, maybe into some type of automation. Look at any of those past challenges maybe that you've had over the last year, the last couple of years. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are some really kind of big operational challenges that you've had? Or maybe some inefficiencies, whether that's in your workflow or maybe you're looking to create a better client experience, whatever those are, just be really, objective with yourself and say, hey, what are some of those as we're looking to improve? And then prioritize those. So we've got a short list. We've done a little bit of, reflection and thinking about what does our process look like today? And then start to prioritize those. What is something or some things that are high impact and low risk with an AI solution, right? So I can start to integrate that maybe slowly. I can take my time with it. Maybe clients won't even necessarily notice it. Maybe this is just something back office that's helping to build our efficiencies. But as you're deciding, which one do we take on first, what's high impact and low risk first? And then you can essentially start to move into, some more levels of comfort there. Additionally, be sure to familiarize yourself with AI technologies. Take time to be thoughtful and understand it. Understand what AI can do today, understand what we anticipate it to do in the future. And that means attend some webinars. I know not always the most fun to do over a lunch hour, but there are people out there talking about it. listen to a great podcast, check out the blogs, but also talk to your peers. Most of us
Yeah.
have really large networks of peers and advisors or those in financial services, and also outside of financial services, those that are using AI
Yeah.
in different kind of new and cool ways too. But talk to people about it because you're not the only one probably experiencing either excitement or hesitation or, somewhere in between that. And then whatever it is that you decide to do, take time to educate your team, fill them
Yeah.
in on what we're doing so that they're also being effective with it. And ultimately start to think about how could this be a key driver in our growth, right? Use AI, use these ideas that you've come up with through that short list and what you're learning. What is it that we want to take forward and start to fuel business growth and start, seeing our success in our way of adopting AI and that technology. And again, some will have more resources than others to be able to grab some of that. Some others will have to take the time to kind of sift through all of the information. But similar to anything else, it's also going to be really dependent on your own level of comfort in using that technology.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that really stood out to me with what you were just sharing there is asking advisors to look at things that'll be high impact and low risk. I think that's it's such a simple but really powerful piece of advice. I mean, everyone's work fills the time allotted, right? So if you work in an 8-hour day, you will find yourself being busy 8 hours, even if busy is like surfing Instagram, right? So it is just the reality of life, right? You will find a way to fill the time allotted to you. Do a bit of a time audit, right? Like, where am I spending my time? What is something that takes a frustratingly long amount of time that you're like, this should be quicker, right? But do a little bit of a time audit. Look at the items that, if I could either take that off my plate or shrink that down in time, how awesome would that be? I did a fun thing just for prep of this, Paul. You'll appreciate this. The prep notes, the outline, first time ever I used AI to generate these. And then I went back and I cleaned it up. The way I record this podcast is we have a prep call, talk to the guest, develop some conversational chemistry, talk about the things we're going to talk about. Usually there's also some support stuff that either the PR team or the guest is sent over and I do a little bit of research. I genuinely spend about an hour of actual prep time creating an outline doc for every guest before we come on. That's an hour of my time, right? Of
Absolutely.
researching, looking at their website, seeing if they've written any blogs, just going through stuff, right? And then thinking about how's this conversation going to flow. So what I did was I uploaded all the previous docs that I've written, outline docs. So now the AI tool has my tone of voice. It did an okay job. It didn't do a great job, but fine, right? Has my tone of voice, the type of stuff, told it what the audience is, told it who the guest was going to be. What is the guest title? Where's the guest work, right? Then uploaded the stuff that the PR team sent over, uploaded the transcript of our call, our prep call, and then said, let's see what you got. And it came out with some pretty good stuff. I had to go in and do a little bit of editing. It didn't really nail my tone of voice if I were to share the way I usually write this, but I'm like, yeah, this is good. Let's test it out. But it saved me,
right?
Because it was the first one, I'll say it saved me a half an hour. Because I did, I spent so much time, but I could see immediately, well, wow, isn't this interesting? I could cut an hour down to 10 minutes. That would be really interesting, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly impactful. And it's also a note of you can go back and edit some of that, right? It may not get it correct. It may not have Mike's tone. It may not be exactly how I would have delivered it. And we do get to still modify technology. And I think that's another key piece is that we do still get to have our human touch in there, even if it's not just in the conversations, but also in the way that we're delivering, we're storytelling a financial plan, and then also modifying certain things inside of it. So that's a great perspective and a really simple example of time saved because your time, like others, is super valuable.
For sure. And it leads into something else I wanted to talk about with you. And we've talked about it on the show and other shows we've produced before. And that is, personalization at scale, right? We hear this a lot. You cannot attend an advisor conference without somebody getting on stage and going, personalization, just banging it over the head that personalization is so important for your clients. And what that really is, as I interpret it, is a bit of a rebuttal or rebuke of model portfolios that seemed like everything was being peanut buttered. Like just a lot of the advice was being peanut buttered across all your clients. And there's value in that from a business perspective, in that, hey, listen, most clients look generally the same to some extent. If I systematize and make everything relatively easy to pop off the shelf, you fit into, category B as a potential client. Great. I have lots of category Bs. You look very similar. It makes your business more valuable because it's efficient. And if I were to sell the business, it's easy to integrate, yada, yada. But these AI tools can truly help an advisor personalize at scale, right? Because now the work I just described with prepping for a podcast that would take an hour, because I had to think about the information, I had to read through it, I had to think long and hard. We could do the same thing with taking some client. Now, obviously, make sure you're not putting this out into ChatGPT, by the way, right?
Right.
No personal identifiable information, but there will be fully compliant lockdown tools you can use in your that you can ask the how do you see? I guess I'll let you lead this because you're smarter than me on this stuff. How do you see AI tools allow or empowering financial advisors to have personalization at scale, to be better, the things that they're advising their clients or the conversations they're having be more personalized?
Yeah. So let's back it up with a little bit of data here. So
Let's go.
We know that there is a growing demand for the personalized experience.
Sure.
We know that the evolution of financial services has certainly moved away from being as transactional as it historically was to being something that is increasingly more personalized.
Yeah.
And if we look at the parallel here, similar to what we talked about with the technologies that we're using in other parts of our world, Netflix and Amazon, it's getting hyper personalized. It's getting smarter and smarter the more that I use it. And there's no reason to believe that clients would not expect the same level of personalization from a financial planning experience. Also, we know that advisors acknowledge the importance of personalization as well. So we did some research just a couple of years ago, actually looking at personalization. We heard it a lot and we're like, what does this mean to advisors? And do they value it as much as we're saying that clients are demanding it? So 86% of advisors actually said they believe personalization is essential to financial planning, and that they said two out of three said that they do not take a cookie cutter approach. They certainly do not subscribe to a one size fits all.
Yeah.
However, in order to scale a business, to your point, you do certainly have to have a little pattern recognition, if you will, of people look similar and this looks like a similar circumstance. And, here are some possible solutions. Now, what's really cool when we think about AI and personalization is the opportunity to have hyper-personalized financial planning for those that may not have always had access to a more personalized planning experience. So those that are getting these really kind of in-depth portfolio analysis, really tailored client engagements, oftentimes that has been reserved for the high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals, because from a business standpoint, it is a business. Time spent in certain places makes more sense than others. And so this hyper personalization not being available to everybody, AI can actually start to create some more of that tailored, personalized experience for more people, which is great. And then we can continue to lean into more of these skill sets we're talking about that are interpersonal, but it is helping us in terms of deepening personalization in a place that used to be pretty difficult to scale into a broader client base. And so that's a really cool opportunity that we can start to effectively scale some of this, and we are giving a better experience to more people.
I love it. I love that you brought up what I always use this term, but you maybe you do it too, like the democratization of high-end services, right? To the point you made, like it wasn't just because, hey, listen, this is a club you need to be in if you're worth, $20 million or more. It's because it was really hard to do, and it required a lot of human horsepower and attention to do whatever the service is. Like as an example, custom portfolios that take into account a lot of the client's different values, right? They may be like, hey, listen, I want things that are sustainable from an environmental perspective. I want to make sure that the boards of the companies that my assets are invested in have a high degree of representation, whether it's women or people of color or whatever the other things that are important to them. So they go down these lists. If you wanted to build that portfolio before AI tools, it would be really hard to do so. And you got to charge a high price for that, right? Or you have to have a minimum for that. But in this case, it's like, I can pop it into a variety of tools now that can go ahead and make we know that board has, female representation, boom, here you go. You're not in oil anymore. You're not investing in tobacco. You're not investing in places that have suspect manufacturing practices. You're good to go. You feel clean about your portfolio, right?
Right, exactly. And that is a really cool opportunity. If you are somebody who's like, I wish I could serve others in a different way, AI is certainly going to potentially start to provide that opportunity for more folks. And that's a really great kind of impactful lens to have.
Yeah, I love it. I'm trying to think about like the way to close this out here, because I know we only have a few minutes left with each other, and I want to get like more bang for the buck out of our conversation. Because I'm totally nerding out on this. I could talk to you for another 3 hours, and you'd probably be done with me. But that's
no, never.
Let's never. That's right, Mike. You're awesome. It's great hanging out with you. Let's kind of wrap things up with the trust element. And I know it sounds weird to say, but there's an old saying that people do business with those they know, like, and trust. I've added 2 other components there: competency and familiarity. I've got to know you're good at what you do, and I also have to see you frequently enough to feel like we're there. And we see that in data. Like, why do people leave their advisor? Usually it's because they don't hear from them, right? Or there was some sort of breach of competency, like they felt like you let them down. But trust matters, right? This is a very trusted relationship. In many cases, the most trusted advisor in a client's life is their financial advisor. It's not their CPA. It's not their attorney. It's like they come to the advisor to ask questions about, where do I go in life? But one of the questions that, believe it or not, AI served up to ask you about is, how do advisors make sure that they have trust and that trust is strengthened when the client can be like fact checking you, right? They be sitting there talking to you and firing up ChatGPT or whatever tool they're using and going, is this true? And it's kind of like having WebMD on steroids when you're talking to your doctor, right? So how does the advisor make sure that that trust element is still there?
Yeah. So first and foremost, don't lose the personal connection. As we continue to engage in technology, and it does really great things for us, it automates, it builds these efficiencies, it does so many things for us. Don't allow it to compromise the human connection there. Yeah. And to your point, trust is fundamental in the financial planning relationship. Trust is fundamental in all of our relationships. Think about who you trust. Yeah. Why do you trust them? What are those characteristics of somebody you trust? It is fundamental. And actually, from a research standpoint, we see that it fuels all of these really great kind of outcomes. If we have trust as the foundation, we often then see that people are more satisfied. There's a reduction of financial anxiety because I trust the person that I'm working with. They also tend to be more loyal or committed to that relationship, so less likely to leave because I genuinely trust them. We also see that they're more likely to give referrals. So from a bottom line standpoint, they're not going to leave and they are more likely to give referrals. Word of mouth is the biggest driver of how people get to their financial advisor. So trust is fundamental when we're thinking about it from the outcomes. But I also want to talk about the fragility of trust, which is inevitable in all financial planning relationships and in relationships in general. But if we think about it in the financial planning relationship, trust has to be there, certainly. So you have to work to build that trust, these personal touches, the interpersonal skills that we're talking about. But it doesn't take that much for somebody to question the trust of their financial advisor. Yeah. It can be the economy, it can be the market, it can be a news, update on their phone. It can be all of these things that simply make somebody think, wonder if my financial advisor is thinking about that or reading that, or if they know the same thing. It can also be the conversation with a neighbor who says, oh, I'm making X% return. And
Yeah.
are you doing that? Are you invested in the same thing? You go and do a quick search. I'm not. Oh my gosh. What is my advisor doing that their advisor? Yeah.
Yeah.
What is my advisor not doing that theirs is? And so we introduce this element of fragility and trust as well inside of the relationship. So it's incredibly important to build it. And there's a few different ways to do it, but one that has proven to be really impactful is to have a collaborative engagement with your clients. Invite them into the conversation, invite them into the planning process, and also use it as an opportunity to help engage them, to educate them, to motivate them, to get them excited about what the financial plan can do for them.
Yeah.
That's incredibly impactful. And what that does is they now have had a personalized experience where they say, my advisor is really invested in this and I trust them. So when that market switches up, when they have the
Yeah.
conversation with the neighbor and they say, I'm not in that, but I have a great relationship with my advisor. I'm sure we've thought about that, right? Build in some of that resiliency that they're going to need to be able to be successful in this relationship. So don't lose sight of the human connection in there, but certainly continue to take advantage of the advances that technology can bring us.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the advisor just directly asking, as part of their normal routine process, tell me what you are reading, listening to, or what have you researched? What have you heard? Because I think I'm thinking more broadly, and we've seen this a lot in the last decade or so, where people are going online and doing their own research and coming up with some interesting ideas about medical science, coming up with some interesting ideas about government conspiracies, coming up with some interesting ideas, I'm sure, about financial stuff, right? So they're, and I think this spans all demographics, right? People go into TikTok all the time and they're getting, financial advice ideas from TikTokers who have no professional background in finance. They're getting all sorts of interesting ideas about how one should approach their medical health from people who have no medical background. So, and I bring this up and it's kind of fun to laugh at it. I laugh at it too, but it can be kind of scary because you will see people who you're like, this person is educated. They went to college, they should be smarter than to believe some wacky stuff they're finding on the internet. And then it can take them sideways. Do you think it's important for an advisor to bring this up? Like, hey, listen, talk to me about what questions you have that we're not covering here. What have you been reading? What do you follow? Do you follow financial stuff on social? And do you think it's important to talk, just hit it head on?
Certainly, if you're comfortable with that conversation, there's a lot of advisors who are kind of uncomfortable with the fear of what somebody could ask or what they may be opening up in terms of, kind of Pandora's box there. But if you're comfortable having that conversation, I would invite it, because here's the other side of things, especially in financial planning. Unfortunately, in America, we don't have a very good financial literacy program. It is generally not required. We're seeing more states do it, right? Requiring it as a part of the curriculum, but it is not across the board in all 50 states. And some of those are relatively new additions to the required minimums there. So it is also, in some ways, not their fault necessarily that they are seeking information and maybe have a misunderstanding of it. And they're also getting all of the, whether they want it or not, social media and other places are also feeding it to them. And so they're getting it. So to be frustrated with it, I think is fair. But we also have the opportunity, a really cool opportunity, to educate them appropriately, right? Be like, you know what? That's a really great question. And I see maybe where you're coming from, or I see why you would bring that up. Let's talk about it. Here's what maybe we're doing inside of your financial planning journey or financial plan more specifically. And we've thought about that. Sometimes it's just an interpretation of we're actually already doing that. Or it's a time to educate and say, you know what, that strategy is really appropriate for X, Y, and Z. And right now we certainly don't see that necessary. But, it would be appropriate if these things were happening.
Right.
There's a really great opportunity to help educate, but also help refine whatever information it is that they're getting. Because you and I know that if you continue to engage in one type of, thread or whatever it is, it tends to keep coming to you more and more and more.
Right.
And so it presents itself like everybody is doing this and everybody knows about this. And it's important that we also are standing there saying, we welcome a conversation, but we're also going to help educate people. That's a really cool part. And then maybe they go back to their phones and they're getting fed some more of that. And they go, you know what? That's actually not true. I spoke to my advisor. They're great. I trust them. And I'm not worried about this anymore.
That's right. Well, another reason why, by the way, why your clients should be following you on social media and you should be putting out regular content frequently, right? So whether it's a podcast, video, whatever, you should be doing some stuff because you will feed their algorithm appropriately. So connect with all your clients. But no, I'm glad you brought that up. So I know, I guess we're at the end of our time together. As I said, we could go for longer and longer. But people are going to want to follow up. They're going to learn more about you. They're going to learn more about eMoney. So eMoneyadvisor.com is the website. You are active on LinkedIn. We'll absolutely have that linked up. I saw that you've got a book that you published with the CFP. So I'll have that linked up as well. But where else can people follow along all the awesome stuff from Dr. Emily Koochel?
Yeah, certainly LinkedIn is the best way. And then following the work that eMoney puts out, we put out a ton of blogs. We have a podcast out there as well. We have continuing education webinars and ebooks and a ton of content. So if you're also looking to supplement these conversations that you're having with clients with some educational materials, that is out there. I invite you to follow eMoney as well as myself. But certainly engage with us. We're happy to hear any feedback and continue the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. It was wonderful to have you.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Huge props to my new friend, Dr. Emily Koochel, for coming on the show, sharing her wonderful insights, and frankly, bringing the good bedside manner for this topic, because I do believe it's causing a lot of anxiety for financial advisors and executives in wealth management. I really do. It's like, on the one hand, it's really exciting. Look at all the possibilities. On the other hand, it's like, wait a minute, this thing can do what? So thank you very much, Emily, for settling our nerves. Awesome stuff. As I mentioned at the top of the show, please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. And if you have any questions, hit me up. That's all I have for you today. Make sure you are being nice to each other, and we will see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.